Hey, what's up? It's Bon. Let's talk about games. So, this conversation is kind of a spin off of last week where we talked a bit about the Grand Theft Auto leaks and how that sucks and how it sucks for reasons beyond what you typically maybe think of. And since then, the day or two after those leaks happened, we had a very good reminder of one of the reasons why leaks suck so bad, because of people like this guy or gal, who knows for real. Design for Mine 317 on Twitter posted, "If you know how game development goes, you know that visuals are one of the first things done. This game is 4 years into planning and development. What you see is almost exactly what you will get. The next year is mission coding and debugging, all back-end stuff. It does look ass." So, disclaimer, I am not a game dev. I have never developed a game. I don't know the intimate details of how games are developed and how that whole process works. What I can say is I have been involved in the development of AAA games at the pre-alpha, alpha, and beta stages. I, have had pretty detailed conversations with developers of AAA games about this exact subject, about how, trying to learn more about how games are actually made, because I've always kind of strived to understand this stuff more, so that when even I'm upset about something, I understand like how this thing can happen or how that thing can be left the way it is. Lastly, someone who I have interviewed on the show, Mark Dara, has a really, really good YouTube channel where he goes into pretty explicit detail about how games are developed and how this stuff happens. And so with all of that taken into account, this person is wrong. Now, as I'm going to show some tweets from actual developers and not random guys with Chad profile pictures, actual developers posting pictures of what their games looked like before they were finished. The simple fact is that visuals are actually one of the last things to happen. And I feel pretty confident I can say that, even though I'm not a dev. And the rest of what I'm going to say is more of just my take. So if you're a developer and I say anything that's wrong down in the comments, please correct me. I'm not speaking on I know all of these things and you should listen to me. I'm more speaking on I think I know this stuff and I might be worth listening to. So what I don't think people realize about game development, and we talked about it I think last week a little bit, but I think it's worth diving into a little more detailed now, is that games, it's a miracle that any games come out. If you could think of the worst game that you've ever played, it's a miracle that game came out at all. Okay. And I think that's something that's lost on people, or people don't understand, or they just don't care. To one point, I understand that it's not a consumer's job to understand how games are made, because at the end of the day, they want to hand over their money and they want to play the product. But if you're going to be like this goofball or that goofball who said that the visuals are the first thing done, if you're going to speak from a place of authority or knowledge, as a fan, if you're that wrong, you're going to get called out, and you should. Because while I don't believe that consumers have to care how games are actually made, if said consumers are going to be judgmental and comment like this, then you do have a responsibility to understand. It's something like I said in that last video where I said, if you don't know, figure it out. Like, look it up. There's resources out there to learn how games are made. Because saying something like this, and I believe that person went on to say something along the lines of like, well, I have this certificate and this degree and stuff like that. I'm assuming it's like a 12-year-old who's just lying during his lunch period at school. But no matter who it is, it's just not the way it works. And the general understanding I have is that with a game, it tends to be, like twice as much planning as actual production, right? So the pre-production, the concept phase, all of that stuff tends to be the bulk of the creative work in a lot of ways. And when you're talking about like concepting and stuff, I mean, you're talking about literally like blocking out levels, maybe where it's literally just all gray and it's just shapes. And then the player character may be like on Unreal Engine 5. It may be that default Unreal Engine 5 character that they provide, because your artist during the concept phase may not even be working on the actual models for the games yet, because in the pre-production phase you probably have a relatively small team who's working on like mechanics and stuff like that, and tools. And instead of when you go into full production and you have many more people working on the game, and they are working on like making the specific, the trash on the floor, or the car that's going to be sitting on the side of the street, or the buildings that will populate the world. And like what this person's saying is just what they said was insane. I've played games in like pre-alpha. I've played games like 6 months before they came out that didn't look like they were going to be done for years on my previous knowledge base. But now knowing and kind of understanding how games work, I understand that, the reason that there is like this crunch culture and things like that. You hear so much about crunch in video games, and crunch is a thing in other industries as well. But I think what's so unique about video games is that, especially big AAA games, are typically hundreds and hundreds of people, if not thousands, working on, dozens, if not hundreds of different tasks, and they all work on them kind of separate. And then, towards the end of development, that's when they start to smash it all together. And, that's why you may see, like leaked footage from a video game, like this Grand Theft Auto footage that leaked, where the game's like, oh my God, this game can't be anywhere near done. But that you may only be seeing footage from someone who's developing one slice of the game, and the rest of the game that looks unfinished to them is being developed by other people in different tracks. And eventually that's all going to come together. The most insane part about it is specifically about this Grand Theft Auto leak is that, Grand Theft Auto 5 still holds up graphically pretty well, and that's a very old game. Red Dead Redemption 2, in my opinion, is the most graphically impressive game ever made. So, you see this hot take, you see these hot takes, and the simple fact is that, like, history tells us something that I suspect that Grand Theft Auto 6 will look at least as good as as Red Dead Redemption 2, and probably better. And what's funny to me about that footage, if you saw any of it, I think it's kind of hard to find now, but for someone who's played games at kind of this level of production, I thought it looked incredible. There was so much done. There were so many things. Like, yeah, obviously there were things that weren't like skinned or completely modeled, like interior lighting and stuff was not done yet. But I thought the game looked incredible. From seeing how other games look at probably a similar stage that like literally have like, half the things are missing. The UI is mostly missing. Like, the NPCs don't interact. Like, seeing what I saw was really impressive. And so when I talked, in that previous video about why leaks suck for lots of reasons, one of the reasons is just the sensationalism and the toxicity and the outright like dishonesty and lies that can come from it. And I think that the Mr. Design for Mine 317 and that tweet was the perfect example of that. And I'm really glad that so many devs from all levels of gaming, from AAA down to indie development, all kind of responded en masse and said, well, actually, this is what games look like just a few months before they come out. And this person was just wrong. And so I don't always think it's good to give people like that a platform who are just clearly wrong. But as I saw Mark Dara and a few other people who did share it and gave their takes kind of expressed like, yeah, we shouldn't amplify people like this and voices like this, but this is a learning opportunity. And even though most people aren't really on Twitter and stuff to learn, they're just there to be angry or whatever. Hopefully it reaches out to at least a few people, just like I hope this video does. So If you have any of your own thoughts, if you're a game developer, or if you're someone who has questions or thoughts or comments, or your own opinions, leave them down in the comments below. I'm curious to hear from you. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to do this stuff more often, and at least once or twice a week. You can also check out my podcast, which is on here, the Echo Cast, where I've done some interviews, but I also do a weekly gaming update show. You can also check out my stream over at twitch.tv/BondDiesel. You can check me out on social media as BondDiesel on Twitter, Instagram, and most other places. And I think that's all I have for this one. So until next time.